Everyone says, follow your heart. But isn't it precisely that runaway heart that has led you into the worst decisions of your life? No one told you this, but there comes a point in your journey when emotion alone no longer solves anything. Crying, yelling, venting, it doesn't bring relief. On the contrary, it leaves you even more exhausted. And it is exactly at this crossroads of emotional exhaustion that a rare force begins to awaken within you, the call of Athena, the strategic intelligence of the soul. While you drown trying to fix everything by feeling, Athena watches patiently. She does not come to harden you, but to save you, because some battles are not won by the force of emotion, they are won by the calculated coldness of someone who knows exactly when to act. And those who understand this master an art that very few achieve, traversing chaos without being destroyed by it. Today, I will show you what no one taught you about emotional crises, how the absence of Athena makes you repeat the same mistakes, and most importantly, how to activate this rare intelligence to finally find peace in decisions that once broke you. If you apply what we'll discuss here, the way you face any crisis will never be the same again. There comes a moment in life when emotion simply stops working. You have already cried everything there was to cry, already yelled, already vented with friends, already taken long walks trying to organize your thoughts, and yet the weight remains. It is as if your emotional reserves are depleted, spinning in circles without producing any real relief. It is at this exact moment that many believe they are broken. But in truth, it is here that something far greater begins to emerge, the call of Athena. When emotion runs out, the soul begins to demand intelligence, not just any intelligence, but a strategic, refined wisdom that few develop. Athena does not arrive amid the heat of drama. She manifests in the silence that follows emotional collapse. It is that subtle, almost imperceptible voice that begins to say, "Now, breathe. Observe. It is no longer time to react. It is time to think." Often, someone senses this after a draining breakup, an unexpected job loss, or a family argument with no resolution in sight. When emotion has already given all it can, what remains is the invitation to mature. And it is Athena who guides this crossing. Most people do not understand this call because they were conditioned to believe that emotion solves everything. Let it all out. Say what you feel. Don't hold anything in. And of course, there's a time when expressing emotions is therapeutic. But there comes a point, perhaps the point you're experiencing right now, where repeating the drama no longer heals. It only perpetuates the cycle. Athena emerges precisely then, when there is nothing left to pour out, but still much to rebuild. It is easy to recognize this moment. You begin to notice you are tired of arguing the same points with the same people. Conversations loop without depth. Advice seems ineffective. Tears turn into exhaustion, no longer relief. It is then, deep down, that something begins to say, now is not about feeling anymore. It is about repositioning. It is like a general who enters the battlefield after the fires of war, surveying the destruction with cold eyes, calculating the next moves with precision. Athena is that internal general. For anyone seeking emotional maturity, understanding this turning point is crucial. It is here that many become stuck, because they believe that if they are not feeling everything intensely, they are becoming cold. But it is not coldness. It is emotional sovereignty. It is the birth of a new kind of strength, the ability to think clearly even when the inner world is still turbulent. It is the beginning of self-leadership. And it is precisely now that we must understand in depth who Athena is within the psyche. Because while you think you are simply too tired to feel, a new intelligence is actually trying to assume command. And it is this strategic, mature, and protective force that we'll delve into from this point forward. Athena is that force that appears when emotion needs a shield. But do not be mistaken. She is not vacuous coldness nor indifference. She is emotional intelligence at its highest level. James Hillman describes Athena as the personification of practical wisdom, the mind that observes the world with clarity and decides without being contaminated by the storm of feelings. It is she who brings the surgical perspective the soul needs at its most critical hours. When Athena acts, the heart still feels, but it does not rule. The mind guides with precision. What Athena does is revolutionary. She does not command the suppression of emotions, nor their repression. She commands their integration and then their governance. Think of her as a general who, even amid the emotional battlefield, stands tall, observing the movement of troops, waiting for the perfect moment to act. She knows that acting out of anger, fear, or despair only worsens the situation, so she teaches how to endure internal pressure without succumbing to it. She teaches how to view chaos from above without being run over by it. And make no mistake, this does not mean not feeling. It means feeling, and yet keeping the helm steady. It is like a sailor navigating through a storm. The sea rages, the wind howls, water floods the deck, but he does not abandon the wheel. He does not let panic take over. Athena is that force within us that holds direction even when emotions threaten to sweep us off course. Now, want a practical example? Think of an intense argument, that urge to retort, to explode, to throw everything you've been holding onto in someone's face. When Athena is present, you feel the impulse, you recognize the anger rising, but you breathe, you observe, and you choose not to react in the heat of emotion. You choose to speak later, calmly, or maybe not at all, because you understand that not every battle needs to be fought. Sometimes the true power lies in stepping back in order to win with strategy. That is why Athena is so essential in times of crisis. Because emotion, on its own, tends to be impulsive, reactive, immediate. And in those moments, if no one assumes internal command, external chaos becomes inevitable. Athena is the one who brings us back to center. She teaches that self-control is not repression, it is an art that saves the soul from falling into the traps of its own emotional turmoil. And the good news is that this cold intelligence is not a privilege of a few. It can be cultivated, strengthened, called up to command. The question is, how do we do it? How do we bring Athena to the forefront when emotion threatens to seize us? That is precisely what we need to discuss now. When Athena is absent, emotions take the helm, and the soul becomes at the mercy of its own storms. The person feels everything so intensely that each small situation becomes a fire. A sideways glance becomes an offense. A critique becomes humiliation. A delay becomes abandonment. And so, day after day, life becomes a collection of little dramas, each one draining a bit more of your energy. It is not the problem itself that destroys you, it is the uncontrolled reaction to it. And worst of all, the more you react, the more fragile you become, because the soul depletes itself without noticing. Impulsivity creates traps from which it is often impossible to escape unscathed. Whoever reacts without thinking hurls words that cannot be taken back, makes decisions they later wish to undo, breaks relationships out of pride, creates conflicts out of insecurity, destroys opportunities out of fear. The problem with reactivity is that it hands over the control of your life to someone else. Whoever provokes you begins to command you. And without Athena, this dynamic repeats as an emotional addiction that is hard to break. Just observe the everyday. A cutting remark from your partner, a petty quarrel at work, a provocation on social media. These are the moments when Athena's absence is most visible. Without the filter of strategic wisdom, the person erupts, retorts, defends themselves, or attacks, always believing they are asserting themselves, but in reality, only digging themselves deeper into the emotional trap. And the more they respond, the more they get entangled in the other person's game, gradually losing their own peace. The problem is that this reactivity not only destroys relationships, but also poisons the mind itself. With every outburst comes a wave of regret, guilt, and anxiety. The mind keeps replaying what was said, what could have been different, what can no longer be changed. And thus, emotion turns into a machine of automatic suffering where the person hurts themselves more than any external aggressor ever could. Athena emerges then as the antidote. She teaches the power of the pause. Before reacting, breathe. Before speaking, think. Before acting, observe. This simple difference between impulse and response is what separates chaos from lucidity. Asking yourself, does this really deserve my energy right now? Where will this response take me? Can be the watershed moment between preserving a healthy relationship or destroying it, between protecting your peace or handing it over to whoever provokes you. But cultivating this pause, this internal sovereignty, does not happen by magic. It is a mental training, a daily exercise of self-observation and emotional strategy, because Athena does not just spring up from nowhere. She is summoned. And understanding how to develop this capacity to observe before acting is the next step we need to explore now. Athena does not prevent chaos from happening, but she teaches how not to be swallowed by it. She is the perspective that remains sober while the world crumbles around you. When dust rises and confusion reigns, most people panic, but those who have learned to activate Athena stand firm, observing, analyzing, breathing. She brings a kind of strategic intelligence that allows you to see the hidden moves that emotion could never reveal. While everyone else demands immediate answers, Athena plants patience. It is not time to act yet. Wait, watch. And it is in that space of observation that the wisest solutions are born. The difference between those who sink in crisis and those who cross to the other side lies in this ability to sustain inner silence. While many react in the heat of events, those who embody Athena understand that not every move must be immediate. Sometimes the simple act of not reacting is in itself a powerful decision, because rushing to fix everything with emotion often only worsens the situation. Athena teaches us to value time as a strategic ally, not as an enemy to be conquered. Imagine an emotional chess game. Whoever acts on impulse moves pieces hastily without seeing the traps ahead, but whoever activates Athena calculates, anticipates, waits for the opponent's mistake, manages their own internal field before attacking. This very logic applies to human relationships, work negotiations, difficult conversations with loved ones. Knowing how to wait for the right moment to speak, negotiate, or decide is one of the greatest forms of practical intelligence. And here is a crucial point. Athena does not nullify emotion. She repositions it. She allows the person to feel everything: anger, fear, sadness. but without letting these feelings dictate decisions. It is like a conductor who listens to every instrument in the internal orchestra, yet maintains harmony with firmness. This emotional conductance is not coldness, it is psychic sovereignty. It is the balance that enables you to act assertively even in emotionally charged situations. This ability to observe before acting also brings another benefit. It spares unnecessary wear and tear. How many times have people exhausted themselves in pointless arguments, trying to prove things that do not need proving, trying to convince someone who is not open to listening? Athena teaches how to conserve energy, how to choose battles with wisdom, how to understand that some victories are won precisely by refusing to enter a fight. But how, practically speaking, do we develop this strategic mind? How do we cultivate this lucid presence amidst the whirlwind? How do we transform this theory into concrete action in everyday life? It is precisely now that we must go from theory to the practical field and understand how, in daily life, we can activate Athena's intelligence to live with more clarity and less exhaustion. The theories only has value when it becomes practice. And to activate Athena's intelligence in real life, you must first understand that reaction time must be trained. Most people respond to stimuli almost automatically. Someone provokes them, and the response comes unfiltered. The first exercise is simple yet powerful. Stop before you react. Breathe. Count to 5. Notice what you are feeling, but do not dive headlong into it just yet. This small pause opens the door for Athena to step in. At first, it will seem difficult. Later, it becomes a habit, and when it becomes a habit, it becomes power. Another fundamental step is conscious journaling. Keep an emotional crossing journal. Each day, write down which situations tried to knock you off balance, what you felt, how you reacted, and what you could have done differently. This simple exercise of observation will train your mind to spot emotional patterns that until now operated on autopilot. Books like Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence help immensely in this process of emotional literacy, because Athena also grows stronger with knowledge. The practice of strategic visualization is also a powerful tool. Before entering a difficult conversation, visualize the scenario. Imagine the possible paths the conversation can take, the arguments that might arise, your own reactions. When the mind has already rehearsed the terrain, emotion loses strength in the actual moment. Athena favors prepared minds. She acts best when the internal field has been at least partly mapped. This anticipation reduces the emotional improvisation that often leads to the greatest disasters. Another valuable exercise is training strategic silence. Learn to endure the discomfort of silence during an argument. Often, the other person expects your reaction to control the game. When you remain silent, observe, and refuse to engage in provocation, you shift the balance of power. Athena operates in silence that is not avoidance, but active observation. Indeed, silence wields almost unsettling strength in emotionally charged environments. Use it as a weapon of wisdom. Athena also appreciates physical distancing when emotion threatens to take over. Step away from the environment, go for a walk, breathe fresh air, change your scenery. Physical movement helps the brain escape the immediate emotional loop. It is a simple resource, but can prevent many emotional catastrophes. Small habits like walking outdoors, practicing guided meditation, or simply listening to calming music help the mind step out of the reactivity field. And perhaps Athena's most profound teaching is treat yourself as you would treat someone you love. When facing a crisis, ask yourself, if my best friend were going through this, what would I say to them right now? This question shifts focus from pain to strategy, because Athena does not eliminate feeling, she organizes it. And it is from this organization that true emotional maturity emerges, which is about to surface in our next step. When Athena finally takes command, it does not mean emotions disappear. They continue to exist and pulse, but now under new leadership. It is as if the soul has matured enough to sustain what once broke it. What used to become a storm now becomes a breeze watched with respect. Anger no longer explodes uncontrollably. Fear no longer paralyzes as before. Anxiety no longer dictates choices. The soul, at last, reaches what few achieve, the ability to feel deeply and yet act wisely. Athena governs in this way, with firmness, but with intelligence. This maturity also reflects in relationships. The person who once expended energy attempting to convince, defend, explain, or please now conserves words. They speak little, observe much. They do not engage in futile debates, do not let themselves be drawn into petty provocations. Athena teaches the power of selective silence, where presence becomes so strong that it dispenses with the need for justification. It is the kind of presence that commands respect without raising its voice. In important decisions, Athena manifests even more powerfully. That anxiety to fix everything in a rush gives way to strategic patience. The person begins to wait for the right timing, knowing some doors only open when the dust settles, and when they decide with precision. There is no longer that feeling of acting on impulse and later regretting it. Now every step is weighed, thought out, and sustained with serenity. The most beautiful aspect is that this new maturity does not make the person insensitive. On the contrary, They gain genuine compassion for others precisely because they are no longer trapped in their own dramas. They can listen without absorbing, advise without carrying burdens, love without losing themselves. Athena teaches mature love, that which offers support without sacrificing one's own axis. Whoever reaches this level acquires a rare kind of strength, the ability to remain whole even amid the world's suffering. And there is something even deeper at this new stage: respect for one's own vital energy. The person learns to protect their time, their peace, their mind. They no longer participate in empty conversations, toxic relationships, battles that lead nowhere. They only remain where there is genuine exchange, mutual growth, and true respect. The soul, once exhausted by emotional wars, now moves with lightness, firmness, and purpose. But the most surprising thing of all is that within this strategic silence and sovereign peace, something new begins to bloom: the true capacity for self-leadership. This is where the inner journey takes its greatest leap. And now that you understand how Athena acts, the question remains clear. How many crises could you have avoided if you had let intelligence take the helm instead of impulse? How many times has your heart led you into wars that never needed to begin? How many emotionally driven words have you thrown out there that you still carry with regret? Athena does not erase the past, but she gives you the power not to repeat the same cycle in the future. And it is here that the real challenge begins. Because knowing all this is easy. Applying it requires emotional discipline. It will require you to breathe deeply when everything within you cries out to react, to choose silence when the ego begs for a response, to observe before acting, and above all, to treat yourself with the same advice you would give to someone you love. It is simple to understand, but profoundly challenging to practice. Now I want to provoke you. Are you truly ready to stop being governed by emotion and start leading your own soul? If you are, write in the comments, "Athena is in command." I want to know how many here have decided to activate this rare force within themselves. And if you want to continue delving into this universe of archetypal psychology, emotional crossings, and true internal sovereignty, subscribe to the channel, click the bell, because what comes next will give you even more tools to transform your chaos into power. Until next time,